and a very warm welcome to this special roundtable. Today, we'll discuss an offbeat topic, which is empowering your workforce to build a security-first workplace. Hybrid work has proved beneficial for businesses, but it has also brought the challenge of cyber risk. A recent report by Statista found top causes of ransomware attacks are phishing emails, poor practices by users, lack of cybersecurity knowledge, and especially weak passwords. Be it protecting critical business data or employees' personal data, cybersecurity has become involuntary critical. In this wake, while enterprises take a technology dependent approach to address cyber risk, they end up undermining the other most critical line of defense, their employees. Given that employees are no more bound to the walls of the office for work and perimeter of network access and data operations have indefinitely widened. At this scale, unless organizations make their workforce holistically security conscious, the risk will never end. Firms must strategize robust cybersecurity practices and learning programs in tandem with security regulations to ensure each employee has a security-first mindset. Today, in partnership with Skillsoft, we are hosting this roundtable to answer some of the most significant questions related to cybersecurity. And to take this discussion forward, I would like to invite my first guest for this afternoon. Please welcome me in joining Ambrish Singh, Chief Information Security Officer, Godrej. Hello, Ambrish.
Hello everyone.
Hi,
thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I'm looking forward for this discussion and taking this forward in the right direction. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. My second guest is Kamal Datta, Managing Director, Skillsoft India. Welcome to the show, Kamal.
Thanks, Abid, and it's always a pleasure to be here. So looking forward to a very insightful discussion.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And I'm happy to announce my next guest for this roundtable is Nagina Singh, Executive Director, HR, DBS Bank India. Welcome to the show, Nagina.
Thanks, Abid. Really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for joining in. My last guest for this evening, Mr. Ramesh Mitra Gotri, CHRO, Ultratech Cement. Welcome to the show, Ramesh.
Hi, thanks, Abid. Thanks. Hi, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us today. As we proceed further, I request all of our viewers to keep asking questions in the Q&A tab, and our experts will share their thoughts on the same. So without any further ado, let's start with Ramesh. And Ramesh, I have a very basic yet important question to ask. So starting with you, what are the key things that an organization should do to empower the workforce on cybersecurity risk?
This is interplay of technology and people, right? And both there is a serious interplay of both, where you are addressing, before you empower people, there'll have to be some interplay of technology. Both can't work in isolation. Technology is the part that will take care of security, gates and access and things like that. And the other side is people. It's like if I take an analogy of an airport, which if you have to go through 20 different stages of security checks, it'll irk the user. So you'll have to have some element of technology, some element of manual intervention and work on. And that's where the people part comes in to, how do you do it? Because it has to, it can't irk the user, it can't irk the employee as an user there. And they have an very important part to play in the whole process of managing information data and the data that we have. And that's a part of empowerment. So what, to come back to your question, to say what an organization needs to do to empower them. I think first and foremost is organization needs to have clarity on what is cybersecurity. I think, organizations do define it in the form of a cybersecurity policy, a framework of how they're going to manage cybersecurity. And that has to be clarified to all the employees. Each of the employees need to be familiar with what is the organization's thinking about it. And therefore, understand their role amidst that, which the policy needs to provide that clarity. If it's not in the policy itself, as an offshoot of the policy, provide clarity around it. Second is, everything about data and information. Organization will need to have clarity about what is sensitive, what is confidential, what is who's authorized to handle what part of the data. And that clarity is important, because often you do one part and don't do this part. There is ambiguity, and in ambiguity, errors flourish. So this clarity about who handles what data and what is the extent of authority that they have on that clarity is important. And that also determines the flow of how data moves inside the organization, outside of the organization, and so on. And that's the part. And tied to that is, of course, the technology, which allows things like passwords and the strength of passwords and the security, not allowing someone else to use your password, not allowing your machine, how to use your machine inside the premises. And these days with bring your own device, adds to complexity of delineating personal information and personal work with the official work. How do you do that, allowing that on the same machine? All of these will be technology plus educating and making the employees aware. Added to that, awareness and education deriving from the policy of what each employee needs to do is also the part of how do you, organization needs also to celebrate success. What I mean by celebrate success is, are we actually displaying good examples? We're very quick to display bad examples that have failed, but there is also an example of good examples of how security is managed. And about if an employee encounters a doubtful email or a doubtful breach that would have happened, who do they reach out to? That clarity of who do they reach out to, what do they do, and how do we celebrate when employees do their part well in cybersecurity part. So that's an important element to be built in. And last but not the least in this is about each employee in terms of their own part. Everyone, organizations go through learning, right? Breaches can happen anywhere, lapses, mistakes can happen anywhere. How is collectively the organization learning from it and fixing it? And I think this is a continuous process that needs to be done. When put this together, employees will not feel that this is enforced upon them. They are very much part of the process. They are also building on to the knowledge and the capability of the organization to manage these breaches. And that's in a nutshell, I would like to put, saying what can an organization do to breach it. Of course, there are methods and approaches to each one of the points that I've said. That's a broader part. In a nutshell, I'd like to leave behind this thought on what we need to do for empowering people.
Thank you so much. And I think you touch upon the very important point that organization needs clarity. Yes, we all need clarity, and especially when it comes to cybersecurity. That will lead us to some other points for sure. So coming to Kamal, since you are running a very important, I think, role to play, your company, and you have a very important role to play, since we are talking about EdTech. And EdTech has played a vital role in uplifting the graph of employees' skills in multiple domains, and no doubt about it. But how are the industry leaders using EdTech partners to approach cybersecurity and helping change the mindset required for Industry 5.0?
There's a bit of an echo, but look, just to go back a little bit, the reason we are discussing this now is because since COVID-19 happened and the onset, there has been about a 500% increase in cyber attacks, right? And if you look at March 2020 onwards data, there has been more than 150% increase in phishing attacks. In remote workers have been targeted very heavily. And there is almost a 300% increase, median increase in brute force attempts as far as cyber, crimes are concerned. And we have heard in the news, whether it was cyber attack on Air India or Unacademy data hack or LinkedIn data hacked and big basket data being available on the dark web for selling, etc. So I think there is a rising awareness and organization that they need to create a safe place, be it work from home or office, in order to uh, continue business in this domain without getting impacted. And I think somewhere there is a realization that, where there is a weak ethics culture, these kind of incidents happen more, whether it's the rogue employee or an outside attack. So I think the fact is that there is enough of technology being used in terms of firewalls, in terms of application security, data security, etc., etc. There are audits being done, etc. What I think we can do as a partner to organizations is to do two things basically. One is we need to transition the employees from just awareness to behavioral shifts. In between, you may have to enforce something. So awareness, compliance enforcement, and behavioral shifts, they have to be done simultaneously, because once you create the right awareness, then you move into behavioral change. But you will find that the just awareness is not enough. In some cases, you have to enforce certain policies or compliance in those situations. The problem that I see is that many organizations have not refreshed at the pace required their IT policies and frameworks. Also, the fact that many of these compliance programs, IT policies, nobody actually reads them. So that creates a problem when nobody is aware, nobody is reading it. And even if they are reading it, I mean, one of the CHROs in a session like this, they said that, after the second wave, there were many casualties in their organizations, and the laptops were returned back. And the families of those employees came back looking and asking for those laptops because they had either their photographs in it or banks data in it and so on and so forth, which was clearly mandated as per IT policy not to have, but they still continued and did it. So I think building a contextual scenario-based narrative which is engaging for the people to understand, comprehend, and build that awareness is very important. A 20-page IT policy document will not help. A boring security, compliance will not help. You have to really build the context, the relevance, why it is important. You are talking about changing culture and shifting ethics and other stuff. You have to engage the employee, make him understand the context, understand the scenario, and then approach it. And in that sense, that is exactly where Skillsoft is trying to be partnering with. We try to build it in a manner which is engaging, which is scenario-based, which is contextual. We keep refreshing it and make it relevant and up to date in variety of different languages. So I think that's the first part of bringing to level of awareness.
Thank you so much. And I think you mentioned about one of the important point is transition from awareness to behavioral shift, right, Kamal?
Yeah.
So have you seen, is there any trend? Is there any from transition of behavioral shift are you seeing in the industry?
Yes, absolutely. I think there is a recognition that your employees are your first line of defense, basically, in this, in spite and despite of the policy. And that from a technology point of view, security is a two-edged sword. I mean, if you have too much of it, you create a prison, basically, and even your employees can't get in. If you have too less of it, everybody gets in. So I think the CSOs and the CIOs walk a very thin line out here in terms of what to enforce and what to not from a policy framework point of view and compliance point of view. So I think the behavioral shifts can only happen by engaging the users, ensuring that they understand their responsibilities and roles in protecting their personal data as well as the organizational data. And I think making them responsible for their actions, making them aware of what actions can cause a cyber security event or a cybersecurity hacking opportunity or etc. is extremely important, but build it in the context, build it in the scenario. So we have seen a lot of success in that globally, as well as in India, in bringing a cultural shift, increasing the ethics and standards of business operations in those organizations. And they have been largely successful and have managed to cut their cost hugely in both terms of protecting themselves from lawsuits and other things, but also in the amount of time and money they spend on this. So yes,
Okay.
ROI is very high. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kamal. And as you mentioned about that employees are first line of defense, and we're talking about people. So I would like to ask one question to Nagina. How important is to put human resources at the heart of cybersecurity? And should HR be involved in technology conversations such as purchasing decisions that revolves around cybersecurity? Do you think? What are your thoughts?
Okay, let me just take a step back. Today we are talking technology, we are talking cybersecurity, we are talking data, we are talking AI, we are talking. This is a new age of a new industry or a new age that we are entering in. If I were to go back to the industrialization days when manufacturing was at the onset, what was happening? There were risks at the plant as well. What were we doing? So slowly but surely, we were gearing ourselves to prepare ourselves for those risks. Similarly, if today data technology are our biggest threat and data will be a business advantage, and in the eventuality, we are not able to manage, and I can say that from a bank perspective, if we are not able to manage it well, it is our biggest weak point as well. So therefore, in my mind, clearly, talking about cybersecurity and technology is going to be the future now. So we might as well gear ourselves up with all the arsenal needed to nullify or mute the associated risks. So in my mind, it's a no debate. It is business as usual. Coming back to what role HR should play in cybersecurity and tech decisioning, I think this is the same answer I would give to when people talk to HR about business. Do you how partnered are you with business? How well do you understand the business? I mean, for us to stand with most of our transactional work in the form of bots, in the form of AI, in the form of screening tools, going away to technology and artificial learning, what remains in the life of an HR practitioner? Partnership. And whether that partnership is with business or that partnership is with tech, in my mind, is the same thing. So I think we don't need to belabor beyond a point as to what role HR has to. I think HR has, because to earlier points made, if we have to have a behavioral change, if we have to hold people accountable, we cannot as human resources do that till the time we are involved right from where it starts. It is like if you are supporting a business as HR, don't you understand the thoroughness of that business? How are you going to speak the language? And even more so, in DBS, we often say that technology as a skill is not only pertaining to the IT department. It is a skill that every employee has to bring. It is a basic competency that every Piyush, who's a CEO, even said that the next banker may be from the IT industry. So that holds no differently from for human resources as well. I mean, how are we going to take people decisions or hold them accountable unless we know their business and we know the associated risks?
Okay, very valid point. And next banker will be from the IT industry. So we'll keep a note of that for sure. Thank you so much, Nagina, for highlighting your point. And I think we have taken opinion from HR heads and also EdTech partner. But now it's time for the CISO. And I would go to Ambrish for this question. Ambrish, since employees are enjoying work from home and so are hackers, with remote working to stay for a while and security measures are below average, what should CISOs do in such a scenario?
Yes, it's a very valid and relevant question. And I was listening very carefully to what Kamal said, related to the awareness part. One piece, he moved from the awareness to the behavioral change. And it takes a lot of time and effort. And what Nagina says is, we are dealing with the new age employees. So you need to be very cognizant of the fact that most of the people in most of the industry, new age industry, they know about the basics of the technology. And they know how to circumvent certain things. So we need to be 2 steps ahead of them. Now coming to in last 1.5 years, 2 years, what has happened actually? So if we talk about, in my view, a digital transformation, which has taken place in last 1.5 years, probably if COVID would have not been there, this could have been taken maybe 8 to 10 years. First thing. Second thing, think about, we never thought that a call center will operate from home. Today, call centers are operating from home. Third thing, we as a traditional way, all the controls were built around, in and around your enterprise boundaries. Like you got a bunch of controls, and all of a sudden everything was decentralized and everyone started operating from home. Now, this has posed a lot of security threats and level of exposure, because threats were always there. But level of exposure to the org depends upon how they were operating before. Like take example of new age companies, there was always an option of working from home. Now take example, a company who never had a scenario where people were working from home. They always used to come to office and work. Even if they had a laptop, nobody was having a VPN. Now in this scenario, organization has to beef up their information security risk, look at what are the threats and what are the countermeasures they can take. One thing is like awareness is going to play a lot of role in the work from home scenario, because whatever measures you take, the Wi-Fi infrastructure at home will remain in the control of the employee. And that most of the employees may not be knowing how to harden the infrastructure, router, etc. they are using at home. Second thing, controls around VPN. Okay, people talk about username, password, second factor, etc. So that's why most of the companies are doing the posture assessment of the endpoints. It means the endpoint which is requesting for the VPN connection, is it the endpoint which is provided by the company, or it is a foreign asset which is requesting by the valid user? And based on the scenario, you take a decision whether you want to allow that connection, yes or no. Fourth thing is, a lot of companies, myself, we have taken steps towards educating people about how to take steps to harden their Wi-Fi infrastructure at home. Okay, what are the basic things they can do? Even if what we did, probably we roll out a script, they can just log into their Wi-Fi infrastructure from their personal laptop, run that script, they'll come to know what is the current settings of their router. They can do certain one or two things to make that better. And then we roll out certain things related to what are the basic things they should follow while they are working from home. And the fifth one is, I think it is very popular and very relevant today, is we should adopt something called a home use program. Okay, so like suppose, see, people may be accessing your data from their personal laptop. Okay, or the infrastructure is same. If infrastructure get compromised from their personal laptop, your everything will fall flat. Correct. So the home use program is, you tie up with the certain well-known, maybe antivirus provider, maybe license providers. You get a very heavy discount for your employees, and then they log in, they buy that, they spend some money, small money. Thereafter they get leverage. Okay, they can install antivirus in 5 devices, and that market cost is maybe 1,000 rupees, but you are tied up, you'll get it in 200 rupees for your employees. You're not spending any money on organization, but that is the relationship you have with the partner. He is giving you that discount for your employees for their personal use. Yeah. So these are things probably people are looking at, and apart from what Ramesh was talking about, access control, who is accessing what is being accessed over VPN, what are the things we can do related to, more people are now using the concept of jump force, etc. Because you want to have probably kind of, you're building an infra or concept towards zero trust. So these are the baby steps, building that zero trust, because zero trust is it's a multi-year journey, and it is a baby step. If you start today, probably down the line, down the many years, you will able to probably you will be closer to that, because achieving zero trust is a very, very conceptual. Achieving that is very, very tough, very, very budget intensive, process intensive. And what Ramesh was talking about, we need to look at the people, process, technology. The more they are working in, they are complementing each other, they are more overlap, the more success we'll get. If they are working in tangent, in isolation, no matter, you have best in breed technology, best of the people, those are managing it, best of the processes. But if they are not talking to each other, things will fall flat. Yeah. So these are the initial thoughts.
Thank you, Ambrish. So I'll come back to Ramesh. And another question for you, Ramesh. Do you think it's an ideal time to introduce cybersecurity policy as a part of HR?
If your question is this an ideal time? The answer is definitely yes. And what is the ideal time? I think any business that has data anywhere, any organization that has data that is getting across uh, beyond an individual and has uses IT for it, this is time. This is time to address it, because to what depth, what elaboration will depend on the complexity of that place. But there is a need to define, and that policy is not policy in my view, the word perhaps I'm using it a bit loosely. Policy in my view is organization to get clarity of saying what they need to do about data and manage data. So putting that together and defining its boundaries of how it will work and what's the role of the management in that, what's the role of every employee in it, what's the role of the partners who have access or share data, all of that, I think put together, we'll need to create that clarity, and the time for it is now. Do it now, do it as soon as possible. That's my strong view about it.
Well, thanks for your suggestion. Thanks for your thought. Ramesh, since talking from Ultratech point of view, have you drafted any cybersecurity policy? Are you
Yeah, we've
in the
been.
process?
That's right. We have a policy. We have a user policy. We have device use policy. We have accesses depending on. In fact, that helped us quickly to adapt to work from home. We did not have any hiccups because of that, because this has been in place for some time. And switching over to work from home was almost instantaneous for us because we do it. And just to share the HR element of it is on joining, there is a complete briefing, part of the induction that happens to every employee. And there is an affirmation, each of the employee have to sign that policy that they have accepted. And there is also a quiz that they have to clear through before they actually get to sign off that policy. And it is done periodically. Every alternate year, we refresh and keep doing that over and over again.
Okay. So that's a tough thing to do. I don't know about the quiz, but hopefully everybody clears that. So coming to back to Kamal. Kamal, one of the core reasons that hackers are successful in their phishing attack is because the company's security is weak. That is by default. Companies have done something, but perhaps not enough in cybersecurity, be it security tools or software. Do you think empowering employees with the help of digital courses will help them to reduce the risk of their businesses? Would you like to elaborate on that?
Look, at the end of the day, as I said before, you want to protect your family, right? And if you want to protect them from all external threats, the best way is to lock them up in the house, right? But then the house becomes the prison. And even then, can you fully protect them if they themselves don't? The point that I'm trying to make is, yes, people have got policies, but then who reads it? And even if they do read it, I'm assuming some people do, how much do you follow, right? And how, even if they have read it and understood it, how do you mandate they follow that? I mean, we know that India's circumstances are different. I mean, maybe an office laptop is being shared by the child and maybe a wife, and they are doing studying from home or taking a course. And you may give a very good password policy, but the password is being shared to the children for using the laptop. What will you do then? I mean, the point I am trying to make perhaps is that you look, technology was anyway there, even before COVID hit, before work from home started. Yes, we perhaps did not plan for work from home. It was not something people had envisaged. At the same time, the digital transformation, the speed at which technology had to be adopted and changed from automation to robotics to AI, ML, etc. Those necessarily meant that you had to change your policy and introduce additional measures in those policies. The problem remains that you may have a policy, you may have that mandatory quiz and policy sign off, etc. How do you change that behavior of somebody sharing the password, right? And that is where the crux of the problem lies. that ultimately, if your employees have to be their first line of defense, which I believe they have to be, because you can't overprotect them with technology, then you have to mandate that, look, I can do so much on technology side and process side of it, but beyond this, I have to work collaboratively with HR to ensure that people don't treat it as just an enforcement and policy. They really understand the context behind it. They really understand why is it that what they are trying to do. If you're talking about prevention of data loss and threat, what about insider threat? Do you really believe that people understand when a data theft has occurred? And if they do, is there a proper way of reporting data theft, ensuring that we're disposing documents and data properly? What about patches? Are you generally logging in? There are 1,000 elements of this, in terms of using mobiles securely or physical security, or identifying GDPR policies and CCPA and suspected breaching, and then there is this rogue employee which I was talking about, somebody who is unhappy with boss and he may do something, right? So I think there are very different elements to it, and I think the people part of it got significantly enhanced in work from home. The employee being the central in security is a new realization with work from home, and unfortunately, it's just not technology, processes, and enforcement. It has to be a behavioral shift, wherein that is where we come in, because at scale you can build this kind of whatever work we have done with globally with customers. We can bring those practices and information to the HR and the CSO and say, hey, look, we have made it so that we can start building the process of changing behaviors, building a different culture where every employee proactively protects the data, understands the implication of their actions, and understand that a particular way, even if they're doing a virtual meeting on how to use the email properly, etc., they really understand the consequences of each of their IT actions, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you so much. Yes, what you mentioned about the human behavior of sharing password that can't be changed unless you understand the sentiment of this cyber security. So my next question is in two parts, and my first part will be a dish for Ambrish, and then I'll come back to Nagina. So I'll start with you, Ambrish. Most businesses go to the IT department to develop policies and procedures around employee security awareness. How important it is to consult HR and why?
In my view, personal view, what I practiced, uh, security policy, if you draft and if you keep it somewhere else, it's not going to yield the result what you aim for. What I recommend is, while you are developing a policy, create a task force, maybe a group of people from the HR, maybe from the legal team, technical team, take somebody from the maybe your corp PR team. Why? And HR is very critical part of it. Since you asked a question relevant to HR only, why? Because they understand they know the pulse of the organization and employees. How there's a culture of every organization has got different culture.
Yes.
And what needs to be done, that you already you know, but how it needs to be communicated, how this has to be imbibed by the employees, how they will take this as an employee, how they are going to perceive this, what you are going to say, what you want them to do, that is well known by the HR. That is how important is. It's not about what you want to get it done, how you want to get it done, because an HR, since they are working very closely with the employees, from their employees motivation, morale perspective, because they have got various data to play with. Okay, now it's very important to take their input and make that policy effective, because your ultimate aim is to change that behavior. That what I think Kamal and Ramesh was also trying to say is that, and you are just CISO or maybe security practitioner. Your ultimate aim is to ensure that employees are following what you have written in the policy in totality, and what are the practices you have derived, like to talk about, is there a violation? Okay, there is a disciplinary process around it. So normally we have in organization disciplinary process for the maybe somebody taken bribe, or some maybe there are a lot of strict groups for the posh related or something like that. But now a lot of organizations are today building a disciplinary process for the InfoSec violations. Okay, and those processes which are related to InfoSec violations, like suppose somebody taken a data knowingly, unknowingly, somebody shared the password knowingly, unknowingly, or somebody did against the policy, what action needs to be taken? This has to be well crafted with the help of the HR team to be more effective. So it's not an option, it is a mandatory. We should talk to the HR, understand their viewpoint, and adapt the policy accordingly. It's, as I repeat, it's not that what you want to do, how part is important, how to communicate this, how to make take this across to the employees. That is more important. Yeah, otherwise it will simply a document and it will live there, and probably you'll keep having the incident and keep chasing the game which will never be able to win. So it's important.
Thanks, Amrish. I think you have seen the glass half full and not half empty, and you have touched that point. So coming back to Nagina, I think Nagina, you have touched this point as well, but I would like you to elaborate. My question to you is, as we talk about as we're talking about how IT department should consult HR. On the other hand, some might say or raise this question: what does HR know about technology? How can they add value? So questions like this can be, asked. So what are your thoughts on the same?
With the case when you walk into any business meeting as well, you do see eyebrows go up and say, why is HR here? Are we being performance managed? Are we being disciplined? Are we here? Are they going to give us a tough message? That is the case. And I think in any situation which warrants change, and we at this stage are limiting ourselves to only the risks associated with technology. We are not, looking at the magnitude of or the rate at which this is going to bombard us, for the use of a better word, COVID or no COVID, in the years to come, that we are forgetting that everyone will have to build up that skill. Everybody will have to have a core competence around technology. So if HR doesn't have the know-how, then my messaging for HR is they better build the know-how to have a seat on the table. Because to earlier points, it's a behavioral change. If we are managing the risk, if we are managing the upside by bringing in people who come with tech backgrounds, who have the right skill sets, we are enabling the business to grow. We are also managing the risk, whereby we are looking at changing the behaviors of people. If we don't have a stake on the table and just have to manage the consequence, whether good or bad, I mean, our jobs as human resources is nullified to a great extent. So my long and short to this, Abid, would be, it is a learning, it's a two-way street. HR will also have to upgrade themselves via reverse mentoring, having younger tech people teach you the rule of the game, spending more time with your CTOs and your chief information officers, and understanding it's no longer going to be support. Tech is going to be business for many industries. It is not going to be seen as a support function like HR was. So when you raise the question, is this the right time to make cybersecurity policies? We've been in the age of technology for quite some time. It's evolving. It's hit us very badly in the negative sense during COVID times. But these are going to be table stakes. I mean, an organization not having a cybersecurity policy is like sitting on a live bomb. So in my mind, I think it is for HR to build those skills. It's as simple as that. What will HR know? What HR knows in business is common questions we get all the time. But I think it's the similar situation when it comes to technology as well.
So since you mentioned that you get such questions and raised eyebrows a lot of time, if you want to share any anecdote that the eyebrows have been raised and how did you manage it? That
No,
would be...
earlier on in my years, where I was most part of my HR, I was raised in PepsiCo. And, unless you work the markets with a sales rep, like a typical Unilever culture, where unless you have become a sales manager, and then any marketing professional cannot think of going to a brand. It was very clear. Even HR professionals walked the markets. We would do the beats. We would sell Pepsi. We would promote Lay's to retailers. We would do first in, first out. We do all of that. So clearly, I mean, what is your cause? How are you going to support the business unless you have a hang on, so you do come across situations, but if you come with an equally strong position of understanding the business, it is partnership versus, now HR has come to give us some message which we are not going to like.
I'll add to that.
Yeah, please.
Just to add to that, Avid, I think top teams must stop thinking as functions.
Yeah, correct.
Top teams must just get together. They are not divided by functions.
It's horizontal. In my mind, there is no vertical.
Absolutely. So if top team thinks vertically, saying what does HR know, what does IT does not understand, or so and so does not understand, we're failing there. I think it's collectively all think for the business as a whole and not as functions.
And Ramesh, whether we like it or not, technology will be our business in some shape or form.
Absolutely. That's the backbone.
Industry, I'm in the banking industry. The tech is going to be the centrifugal force and so humongous that it is going to subconsume the core business that we were in.
Completely. 5 years from now, the way we work is going to change completely.
Yeah, and if I can add, I mean, I was in Singapore, used to use DBS Bank personally. Look, I have been saying this for over a decade now, that every business will be a software business, whether you like it or not, basically. Every business will be underpinned by technology. I think I just wanted to revisit what Amrish said, and there is no right or wrong answers, but I just thought I should point this out that, look, if you want to penalize an employee for wrong behavior or a wrong action from an IT security point of view, that could be one approach. But then we are into, you have to take a position of employee wellness and care from an HR perspective. Stick works, we know that. Carrots work too. But I think when you take a view of a welfare state or as a country, banning some things or enforcing something or penalizing behaviors can only take you so far. There will always be people who will do something in the back end, etc. I think the true shift which we see, whether you look at countries or governments and regulatories and stuff like that, it will always be from that behavioral point of view that I was talking about. It is a slow process. It is not as easy as putting a firewall or a password policy. So it takes effort, but more importantly, it takes collaborative effort. You have to take HR as a partner. You have to take L&D as your partner. You have to think about business impact, and you have to get your legal and security and CIO into the room. And between all of them, you have to decide how do you want to approach this, which organizations you want to partner with, etc., etc. Those are important decisions. In the end, what I'm perhaps recommending myself is that I don't like the penalty-based approach. I would always look at that cultural piece of it and say that let every employee understand that as an employee, how he contributes to the security of the organization, protection of information, and the consequences for the organization, its shareholders, its customers, all the employees that work with him in his team. What are the consequences for them if such a event were to occur? I think those are more powerful way of narrating and explaining. And that is what we need to rely on, the power of explaining them this particular situations. And I think today there is enough good content that we have kind of built, which it kind of does that to a large extent. But again, it's a matter of all these stakeholders coming together, which will ultimately translate to that ideal state that I'm talking about. But it's a journey completely. I agree.
Amrish, would you like to add something? Because this
question, so as Nagina said, I think Ramesh was talking about, as you talk about, I was before Godrej and Boyce, I was head of InfoSec for Flipkart. Flipkart is totally technology driven. Okay. Talk about today new age companies, Paytm, Swiggy, Zomato, talk about all these companies. These are companies, mostly talk about PhonePe and all, they were not existing 4 years, 5 years back, correct? They're all technology driven. They are born in cloud. Technology driving the entire business. And they are taking big bets based on the technology available to them. They are using disruptive technologies today, the power of cloud, robot, bots, name anything, IoT, everything they are using to enable their business. And what I think what Kamal said, rightly said, we need to make the employee feel empowered and accountable. So they are the data owner. It's their own responsibility that they have the ownership towards it, protecting it. If they feel that, if that feeling has come, probably most of the things will fall in place, because most of the work will be done. Whatever the policy, procedure, and guidelines we want to build, ultimate aim is to make sure that the end user who is going to use your email system or endpoint understand his accountability, and who's going to use his data, he understands it's my data. I need to do everything to protect it. Even if somebody not said, but if he feel that ownership and accountability, he will do everything what is required. And that is what ultimate aim of what we are doing, maybe as a awareness program, or you are drafting policy, or maybe HR is trying to talk to the people, as Jangina said. Today, that is the basic competency everyone should have. And that is what the people are building a lot of awareness program around induction program, what Ramesh was talking about. Then you have regular emails, e-modules, then you have quizzes, then people celebrate InfoSec week, InfoSec month. So this happens. The ultimate aim of this, all this is to communicate to the employees in right way from multiple ways, so that you are able to just knock on their behavior and make those changes in the right direction. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amrish, and thank you, everyone. I think now it's time to take some audience questions. So first question is from Sanjay Sachdeva. Sanjay is asking if the leaders can share that work from home was threat to database, or in other words, if cybersecurity was on their radar, why still they not initiate employment verification when it is hybrid kind of working conditions? Who would like to take this up? I think Nagina or Ramesh, you both are ideal person for this.
So when you're saying employee verification, is Sanjay referring to background verification or?
Yeah, even I wasn't very clear on the question.
I think the question is more around, the fact that this was known.
Trust. Yeah.
It's about trust, basically. So I think you have to approach with the trust first. I mean, if you're an employee of a company, you are trustworthy. You are somebody you can trust. So I think,
Undoubtedly.
from my perspective, it's more about, sometimes people do things out of ignorance. Sometimes they do things because they believe that, kuch nahi hoga, passport share kar lete hain, kind of casualness, but more importantly, I think the important thing is to understand is that this is like any other skill. You talk about digital dexterity across the organization. This is another kind of skill. InfoSec is a mandatory skill which every employee has to understand. He has to understand how phishing works. How I was seeing this flicks. It's called Jamtara. I think some of you might have seen it. I mean, people are told not to share their OTP, but they do it on the phone anyways. So I think the fact is that you have to ensure that you can trust your employees, and that if you build that skill in every of your employee of this InfoSec and what the implications are, maybe the behavioral shifts will happen much faster.
And I think the premise should not be that because people are working from home, there is going to be cybersecurity risks. The premise should be completely the opposite. If you are going to go with the fact that ghar khula hai aur chori hogi, then the trust is being broken. You will never be able to build it. And to the earlier point made, that people don't do it because everybody coming to work is not here to steal your data or your information. It's just the casual behavior that we have, and more so in the developing markets than the developed markets, where people are still more sensitive. Remote working has been in practice in shape or form for many years, where one can sit in LA and work for UK and all of that. India, we are still very interested to come to work, because unless we see our employees 5 days in a week at work, we don't have a gauge of whether they are working or not. So all these elements are a build up towards, and people usually do these things ikka tukka case. In my experience, in all the data leakage cases that I've been managing in the bank for the last 3 years, ikka tukka case is where it is intentional and malified. Most of the times it is to do with, I wasn't aware. Well, the bank has very, very stringent policies and procedures to ensure that you are aware. But it's just casual carelessness. It's mistake. It's typing an email ID, another got typed up. Checks and balances in the banking industry have to be very strong, but people intentionally don't do it. So if we go in with the premise that we are going to only apply the lens of the fact that people are maligning our data and there is a cybersecurity risk to our information, then it's it's car crashing that journey even before it starts.
Yes, car crashing the journey before it even starts. So be aware. And next question is from Rohit. Rohit is asking, RPC overflow, can it be used within cyber securities in mainstream of VPN, where phishing attacks are drastically reduced? Would welcome to know. Amrish, would you like to answer that question?
Can you repeat?
RPC overflow, can it be used within cyber securities in mainstream of VPN, where phishing attacks are drastically reduced? I think RPC, remote procedure call, that's what it is referring.
Yeah, but I think two are different things. See, even if you're not on VPN, okay, see, most of the companies, they've got their email system on cloud today. And the email is delivered to you via the email system. Okay. So once you receive, if like the two pieces, VPN is just you want to access certain or on-prem application, you get connected to VPN. If you have email system on-prem, then you need to connect to the VPN and then you need to access. The two scenarios are different. But if your email system, which is 90% organization today, Office 365 or G Suite, right? Now that is delivered via cloud, so that phishing, for the phishing, the preventive controls, there are two controls, detective and preventive controls, correct? Then whatever we do, like you have email ATP or you have bunch of awareness program or alerts, or you have the banner, like suppose you receive an email from the external domain, you get that banner, correct? These are the preventive controls to make you alert. Like suppose you receive an email, you feel that this has come from the external domain. Hey, this could be a phishing because you feel that this has come from the external domain. That is one pointer. But a lot of things around phishing gets addressed by the technology. But even if that phishing, which was well crafted, a well tuned practice, because most of the phishing, which are the spear phishing, which is one-to-one, who have done a lot of research on you, you want to get some data or you want you to click. So he'll do a lot of research on you. He'll well crafted, he'll send an email, and that email has passed your email ATP and what are the solution. And if you click, then only people get. And thereafter clicking also, people have a bunch of technology again to find out. But again, it's all depend upon how smart you are or your organization is, how smart. It's a game. Okay, it's a cat and mouse game. So because today we got XDR, EDR, etc. But as I said, the people, process, and technology has to work together to ensure that the success rate is high. So only see, as a security practitioner, we have a lot of holes to plug in, right? As a hacker, a malicious user, or maybe you call it cyber criminal, they're just looking for one vulnerability to exploit. Okay, that is the game. A game is not fair. Yeah.
So you got your answer, Rohit. The game is not fair. Another question is from Vikas. Vikas is asking, are there any all-in-one IT security solutions for MSME, which can be well managed with minimum IT team? Any popular brands which provide hardware, software, and good support system?
Yeah, so see, today talk about, suppose you want to have a that you can divide into two parts. One is the malware protection, one is the data protection. Okay, if you're looking for malware protection, you go for the NGIV with EDR and a bunch of other things like proxy, etc. There are technology which provide everything. If you want to you are looking for the data protection. So data protection on the endpoint, laptop, desktop, data protection from email DLP, cloud, web proxy, CASB kind of solution, cloud DLP kind of thing. You will go for the technology which provides one agent, multiple licenses, provides all these solutions. Okay, so these are the, probably you can look at key. You want to have a protection from malware. You are looking for the protection from data perspective. So probably there are one or two technology you can take care of all of your need. But again, there will always be delta which is left behind. But these things will cater for majority of the requirement, which endpoint requirement or user perspective, and what we see in last 4 or 5 years, or maybe particularly in the last 2 years, that will solve. Or if you're not providing any asset to your employee, maybe take an example of call center, okay? Call center today operating from home, and call center agents are operating from their own laptop. But still, malware and data protection is in place. Why? Because they are using there's somebody using virtual desktop, somebody using some kind of solution which does not allow any data copy, paste, etc. It is hardened, and there's a secure connection to your infrastructure. They get access what they are supposed to have. There is a data masking, bunch of things are happening. Okay, so those bunch of solutions are there. Depend upon the business you are. You need to understand the business of the business, what kind of protection your business needs. Manufacturing may not need the kind of protection what Flipkart and Amazon need, because their business is on internet. Correct? I've seen that edge. But manufacturing, their business in the manufacturing plant. Okay. Now here threat is different and Flipkart threat is different. Okay. So you need to understand your threat landscape, risk exposure, and work out your controls accordingly.
Thank you so much. I think Vikas, you have got your answer. So we have only left with 3 minutes before we say bye to our audience. And I would like to ask one quick question to all of you. Can you just share one key takeaway from this session? It can be in one word or one line. I'll start with myself. I think my key takeaway will be organization needs a clarity, or Ramesh mentioned that's my key takeaway from this session. I'll start with Kamal. If you can share your key takeaway, one word or one sentence, that will work.
The fact that, my key takeaway will be that CSO, CHRO, CLO, and CTO, they need to come together, sit in one room, and stop thinking in silos and think how they can work towards building this behavioral shift.
Nagina?
I think for me, the big takeaway is that it is a behavioral change. We can do the carrot and stick till the cows come home, till the time employees feel or people feel that it is important and the behaviors will need to change. I think that's my key takeaway.
Ambrish?
Yeah, so the two key takeaways probably I can talk about. One is cybersecurity, keep it simple. And stick to the basics. Keep your basics strong. Second thing, take your stakeholder along with you. They will help you. Get their confidence. They will help you and to achieve your ultimate aim.
I take away the way Ambrish put it, zero trust to 100% trust. The spectrum in between is the more critical. You can't get onto the extremes of defining for zero trust or defining for 100% trust. It has to be something within that spectrum in between. So I think that was a big take for me.
Great, different key takeaways from everyone. And thank you, everyone. It was wonderful hosting you. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Hope we'll meet again. And thanks to the audience as well for asking questions and attending this event. Thank you once again. Thanks a lot.